Welcome to Aging on the Suncoast. I'm your host, Jason Martino. Hurricane season started June 1st and lasts through November 30th. While we prepare for all potential hazards, it's extremely important that we spend some time preparing for both of our counties' biggest threat, a hurricane. While we did not experience a direct hit in 2016, both Pinellas and Pasco counties suffered a tremendous amount of water inundation directly related to Hurricane Hermine. Because of our luck, we can never let complacency get in the way of planning. This is especially true for the senior population that resides in either of these two counties. While many in our everyday community are vulnerable, seniors are far more vulnerable after disaster, such as a hurricane. To assist our audience in taking planning seriously, we've invited Sally Bishop, the Director of Pinellas County Emergency Management, and Laura Black, the Assistant Director of Pasco County Emergency Management. Today, our guests will help shed light on important senior preparedness information. Sally, welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast. We're glad to have you.
Thanks very much. I'm glad to be here.
No problem. And Laura, you're new to the show, but we're also very happy to have you here to express views of Pasco County today.
Very excited to be here.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. So we've gotten lucky once again in 2015 and 2016, and I think all the way back to the 1920s, we have not had a direct hit in any of our two counties, Pinellas County or Pasco County. And what we try to do as professionals in this field is to encourage people to take planning and preparedness very seriously, and especially the seniors that reside in either of these two counties, a very large population. So today's show is going to be dedicated to helping those that currently live here and our seniors, help them prepare for hurricane season, as well as a lot of our new residents that come in and that maybe don't know how because they've lived up north and never had to experience anything like we may have. So Laura, I'm going to start with you. What's the first things that a senior should be thinking about when they're going into their planning mode for hurricane season?
Well, identifying what are the hazards to the area. So if you are in a high vulnerability zone, knowing your evacuation routes, having a community of people together that can help you form your plan. Your plan shouldn't just be with yourself, but it should be with your family, with your caregivers, with your friends and neighbors, that those that are part of your community that help take care of each other should know what you're planning on doing.
You're right. Sally, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll mention that our evacuation zones changed this year, so that first step of knowing what your vulnerability is checking your evacuation zone. So we want to be sure our residents understand that they need to check their evacuation zone, because there's a possibility that it's changed from last year's.
Yeah, good point. And we're going to talk about evacuation zones a couple different ways during the show today. We're going to talk about the neat technology that's out there that we can use to learn that, and some of the old school ways that we can still find out how it is too. So let's talk about evacuation zones right now. How does one find out what their evacuation zone is? Seth?
Well, for us, it's still the app that we've always provided to folks, which is www.pinellescounty.org. Emergency. They go to our page, and it's the Know Your Zone app. Mm-hmm. But the guides are printed. Our all hazard guide that we annually print is out, and they can look there. It's a little harder there. They can do it by address when they go onto the online app, or they can call our office directly at 464-3800, and we'll give it to them over the phone.
Cool. Laura?
Very similar to Pinellas, Pasco County, and we have our evacuation zones and our disaster guides. They can call us up. They can go on to the county's website, which is pascocountyfl.net, and it's right there on the very front cover or front page that they can click on. If they don't have internet access, they can use our Pasco app, either the My Pasco app, or it would be about the third bullet down that they can find that information. Or they can call our customer service number, which is 727-847-2411.
Nice. So you guys have many modes where people can get this information. And I personally use the guides. And I think you're right. The maps in there are very, very detailed. But unless you have key hawk-like eyesight to pinpoint where your house is, sometimes you have to take it to a different level to kind of figure out what your exact address is in there. Now, the evacuation zones, we're talking about residents that live within their own home, and that's what they're going to be curious about, figuring out where their evacuation level is. A lot of times we have residents that reside in skilled nursing facilities and or assisted living facilities. What's important to them to understand, given that residence that they're living in, about the about the place that they're staying? Laura?
the facility should have a comprehensive emergency management plan that it talks about what they plan on for their residents and how they plan to care for them. So they should be talking to the facility that they reside with to learn what that plan is. But also knowing what their own personal plan would be going forward should they need to evacuate.
Yeah. Sally, anything now?
Other than sharing that and making sure family members are aware of that, I know that in some instances folks that may be staying in an assisted living facility may choose to leave and go with family rather than stay at the facility. All of that kind of discussion should be had with the facility and any family or friends that you may be developing some other plans with.
Yeah, I think the key word is share, and I think we'll probably beat that drum today, because while we're responsible for our own plans out there, it's always a good idea, in my opinion, to share it with the people that are close enough to us. And if the facility, the skilled nursing facility or the assisted living facility doesn't start out their conversation what those plans are, it's a good question to ask them, right, to figure out what those plans are so they can share that with their family
absolutely.
members, right?
Yeah.
All right, so a lot of times we have multiple sections within each county, Pasco and Pinellas County, where we have evacuation levels, and then we also have non-evacuation levels too. So let's talk about those non-evacuation levels and the residents that live there, and that may make a choice if we have a tropical storm or a hurricane coming down the pike, that they may decide to stay home. What are the things that they need to think about? Sally, I'll ask you.
Well, first and foremost for us is the way we're laying it out to our citizens is it's connect, assess, prepare, and then share. The connection part is just as important as the assessment part. They need to know how they're going to get emergency information, whether it's through a radio or whether they sign up for both of our counties have notification systems. So we encourage all of our citizens to sign up on our notification system so that they'll get a message that tells them what's happening if they're in an evacuation level that's been ordered to go, so on and so forth.
Communication is key, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Laura, anything to add on that piece?
Well, yeah, and it's just making sure that if you are planning on staying there, that you are able to. The evacuation zones are largely based on the storm surge map, so that's the water hazard. So if you're staying home, you still have a wind hazard that could be associated with the storm. So making sure that your home is situated or properly prepared for that, whether you're bringing or tying down patio furniture, things like that, that they don't become windborne debris.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah, it's immensely important.
And I would add that I'm sure both of our guides have survival checklists for preparedness that have some of the really critical things on it that they need to be considering, their medications, battery-operated radios. I know they're old technology, but they're still great technology, and they're going to be very useful when no other technology is working.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. So we touched on two key points in here. You talked a little bit about mitigation, too. So if there's opportunities for if they're going to stay in their home, if they've thought about assessing their house for mitigation ideas, hurricane straps, obviously bracing their garages and their doors and this and that, that's always going to be pertinent. Survival kits, though, is ultimately going to be, it may save someone's life depending on the items that they put in there. One of the things that we've talked about on previous shows and is a lot of times the news media will heighten everybody's awareness that they need to start getting their survival kits together. And a lot of times we deal with a low-income community, and that is sometimes a burden just to rush right out and go out and buy everything that they say they got to get in that. But there's ways around it, like piece billing, right? Mm-hmm. That seems to me a good idea. And then the other thing, I think, Sally, you actually talked about last year. I was real. I never even thought about it, but it's exactly true, and I apply it to my own preparedness. Is that a lot of times we just have things sitting around that all we need to do is supplement. So we don't need to go out there and make it a big burden to go buy everything that's on that list. Let's talk about a couple things that you think that should be in everybody's survival kit, and especially as it deals with seniors. Laura, do you have any ideas?
Well, number one thing that you always hear is water, and how much water. There's different types of guidelines. At a minimum, you need at least 3 days. Some guidelines go up to 7 days, others are 3 to 5 days. But I think that bottom line is having that 3 days. For our senior citizens, the weight of the water can also be an issue, so making sure that you might have the smaller bottles, but having at least a gallon per person that's with you per day is what you want to make sure that you have.
Mm-hmm. And you said with you, and that's a good point. because a lot of times we have people that are living alone, but we also have times where they're caring for another. So we need to have enough in that that's going to be helpful to that person that they're caring for.
So, and with the non-perishable foods, you want to make sure that you have something that you like. I don't like seafood, so me having a bunch of tuna cans, that would not help me because I probably wouldn't go to those until a last resort. And as well as for our senior citizens, the grip strength for some of the can openers that you need to have to make sure that that can opener, you can use it.
Another good point. I learned the hard way on a cheap beef stew one time that I didn't like how it quite tastes. I won't mention any name. The documents. Documents are another thing that sometimes we get to. Do you care to expound on documents?
Well, other than their critical paperwork, they're important, their insurance paperwork, those types of things. We encourage everybody on a regular basis to get their pharmacist to print out their medication lists for them when they're at the pharmacy picking up prescriptions so that they have a current copy with them all the time. And also making sure they get enough medication. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to talk about it later.
Yep.
There's some important things for them to know, but medical equipment as well, making sure that they're prepared with whatever medical equipment they're dependent on, that whatever kind of preparation they need to do with that they've done as well.
Yeah. And I think another point that we were talking about earlier, Sally, that I know you wanted to raise was the fact that they don't have to shelter in place by themselves. If they have other folks in there, they can shelter with them. Sometimes that might be a benefit, right?
Sure. If you can stay home, if you're whether you're in an evacuation zone that's not being ordered to evacuate, or you're in a non-evacuation zone, that makes you a safe haven for somebody else. But if you have to evacuate, you may know somebody that you can go shelter with, and most people don't want to stay home alone under those conditions anyway.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities there to pool resources, and then nobody has to have all of anything.
Yeah, I'd rather not stay by myself. I think if I can couple up with somebody else, I think that would be optimal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My parents were in Hurricane Matthew in Northeast Florida, and they're in their late 60s, 70s, and they ended up going with all their friends to a hotel that was outside of the evacuation zones, and they made a kind of a hurricane community party where they had their food and stuff in the cafeteria area or the continental breakfast area of the hotel.
Yep.
So having that community together kind of also made them feel a little bit safer.
Excellent example. All right, so let's talk about the people that have made a choice to leave, which is probably a good choice, and because they are in an evacuation level 2. What are the things that they need to be thinking about as they are planning for their departure? Laura, do you want to add?
With your kit, just making sure that you have everything together. It's easy to grab if you have to evacuate, that you know the routes that you're going to be taking. Know where you're going to go. You don't have to leave and go hundreds and hundreds of miles outside of the zone. You just need to make sure that you're in a safe location.
Yeah.
So whether it be a hotel or if it needs to be a shelter of last resort, making sure that you're registered either as a special needs if you need to be, or to know which shelters are open.
Yeah.
Not all of our shelters in Pasco County will be opening
Correct.
at the time. It's based on what the situation is and the need at the time.
Yeah, so good segue into special needs. I know that the county provides a litany of different types of general population shelters for people that have nowhere to go and that just need a safe place to do it. And then we hear the idea of a special needs shelter. Sally, do you want to just elaborate a little bit more on what a special needs shelter is?
So it's one step above it's a lifeboat too, if you want to call it. We call general population shelters the lifeboats, and the special needs shelters the second version of a lifeboat, with a little more capability for some of our residents who may be oxygen dependent at certain levels that they use, some limited medical capability at those shelters, and some additional staffing at those shelters. But it's still not your first choice.
Yeah.
If you can make other plans to go hotel, motel, someplace else like that, we thoroughly encourage people. You're going to be much more comfortable if you go to that type of an accommodation with family and friends or a hotel, motel versus the shelters. But that's what they're there for, is to give people a safe place to go. And I would reiterate, we tell people this for years, you don't have to go hundreds of miles, go tens of miles. You're only getting away from the storm surge vulnerability. You're not going to outrun the wind generally, as we saw in 2004. So, that's what you should be planning for, and that you're implementing early enough to be able to get to where your plan is to go.
Right, and unlike a general population shelter, if they make a decision that a special needs shelter is their only choice, they should register. And when should they be registering? Now.
Absolutely.
Not waiting
now.
till the last minute, right?
We take applications all throughout the year, and you need to reapply every single year.
Good deal. Good deal. Ladies, we're gonna take a short break, and hopefully you guys will be able to join me on the second half of our show. We're going to cover a lot more cool stuff on there. Please stay with us while we take a short break. As usual, don't forget to have a pen or pencil ready. During the break and at the end of our show, we'll be highlighting good information covering both Pasco and Pinellas County's disaster preparation resources. When we come back, we'll explore more senior preparedness ideas.
Soon it will be time to make important decisions about your Medicare prescription drug coverage. The Florida Department of Elder Affairs SHINE program can provide free, unbiased guidance in selecting a Medicare Part D or Medicare Advantage plan. If you have questions or need help, SHINE can guide you through the enrollment period ending December 31st. More information is available about SHINE at 1-800-96-ELDER. That's 1-800-963-5337 or on the web at floridashine.org.
Welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast. During the first half of the show, Sally Bishop and Laura Black helped us understand senior disaster preparation and sheltering options. So let's continue this conversation and talk about other ways that we can prepare. Laura, welcome back, and Sally, welcome back to the show. Glad you're able to join us. When we left the first segment of the show, we were kind of wrapping up the idea of the special needs population shelter. And one of the ideas that I know that we really wanted to communicate to our audience is the idea behind transportation out there. Sally, do you want to cover anything more of the transportation piece?
Sure. The whole part of the idea of special needs is for those who are need the transportation assistance. So they may not need those other things that are available at a special needs shelter, but they need transportation assistance. They're still going to sign up through special needs for that. Mm-hmm. It may mean that they go to a general population shelter versus a special needs shelter. They'll go to the most appropriate shelter environment for them, but if they need transportation, they need to register.
Yeah. And Laura, we were talking about the process, really, and the fact that it's imperative that they register as soon as possible and not wait to the last minute. And then there's certain actions that the county takes to make sure that that information is correct. Do you want to talk about that?
As I mentioned in the previous segment, that we require that our residents register every year. Part of that is we will also use our staff to go through that list of registered individuals and make sure that their contact information is correct and that they still have the same needs that they had when they originally registered.
Right.
And that way, before a disaster, if we're having to activate our special needs list, we have the correct information and we'll give them a call and make a courtesy check to see if they need assistance or not.
Yeah, and Sally, I don't think that's any different in Pinellas County as well.
It's a smidge different, but what I would add to it is that they're going to get a call at some point, whether it's one early on, like Pasco's doing, to double check their data. I know our departments, our fire departments who do our pickup are going to be making those calls early on to make sure they're still there, they still want assistance, so on and so forth, and then they'll probably get a second call when it's getting close to time to be picked up.
Good points, good points. And that's dreadfully important, the evaluation of those on whatever basis that both counties do it, because the senior population, they experience significant changes sometimes at a drop of the dime, but on different intervals during the course of their life. So health conditions can change, and they can change pretty frequently. So we talked about special needs a little bit. We talked about sheltering options before, and what people are to do if they live in an evacuation zone and or a non-evacuation zone too. And a lot of our residents that live in either of our counties are maybe receiving assistance from home health care agencies. Let's say that they're at the hospital and or they're at the skilled nursing facility and they're doing some rehabilitation, and now they're back home and they have home health in there too. Those residents, what do they need to know from their home health agency?
Well, it's a conversation they need to have with them about what the home health agency's plans are for continuity of care for them, and to share with that home health agency what their plans are during a hurricane evacuation so that they can figure out how that continuity of care piece is going to work.
Yeah, so we went back to the share principle on here, that they both should have that communication, and that's a two-way street, that they should understand what their home health agency's plans are and how they're going to continue care, just like Sally said, and then also what the plans are of that individual, which might be entirely different. So at least we have a common ground of understanding based upon that, right?
And if you could put it down in writing, that's another avenue that you can actually have it still with you. Sometimes in a disaster situation, memories can get a little foggy when you're trying to hurry up and collect everything. That if you have it written down, you know the numbers that you might need to contact to let those other individuals or the home health care agency know this is what we need and this is what we're doing.
And interesting, because in my world of documentation, if you didn't write it down, you didn't do it. So it's a good way to take a look at it too. We touched lightly on medications and the importance for people to think about that when they're doing their preparedness too. Do you want to elaborate and share any more ideas that you have on that big necessity for our older adults?
It's not so much an idea as it is that I think it's important that if our residents understand that they have an opportunity to refill their prescriptions and not be charged, an inordinate price for it, for insurance to cover it, even if it's before the refill too soon time. It's possible to do that during an emergency. It's either when we go under a hurricane warning in one of our counties or both of our counties, and if the governor's declared a state of emergency for our counties, then the pharmacies are supposed to receive notification to lift that refill too soon prohibition and be able to give them an emergency supply of medication.
What a great idea. And that occurs statewide, so obviously that benefits residents in Pasco County as well. One of the things that we talk about, there's a variety of ways that people receive their medications. They can get the pill form or they can get the liquid, but a lot of times they have to keep those things, those medications refrigerated. And in the event that we have a power outage and we don't know how long that may last, the refrigerator might not be doing such a good job keeping that. So coolers, ice, is that a good way to take care of some of those refrigerated medications?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cold packs, so if the ice is melting, having a gel pack or the cold packs can also be another benefit.
Yeah, and I don't remember which, but I heard one of you say before that there's they have access to getting a list printed out. I don't remember who was talking about it. But
yeah, the pharmacy can print them a list at any time for what their medications are, and I was going to encourage them to have a conversation with their pharmacy about that issue of if they've got a medication that says it's supposed to be refrigerated, have that conversation and find out. But during an emergency, what is that really going to mean? Can this stuff go without, sitting in the refrigerator at a particular temperature? How long could it do that? So on and so forth. Because I'm sure there's some variation to that.
All great points. All great points. All right, so let's talk about pets. Okay, it seems like everybody has pets out there. There are extended family members too, and when we prepare as normal citizens, we need to prepare them for our pets as well. We have cats, we have dogs, and birds, and snakes, and all sorts of things. And I know the county has some provisions to help with that. But it's the individual's responsibility to start the preparedness process through their planning for that. Laura, do you want to elaborate a little bit on what how people in Pasco County can do that?
Absolutely. It's just like preparing for yourself. Your pet being the extension, you want to have your pet's vaccination records. Mm-hmm. Any type of other medical requirements for your pet. You need to have food and water for your pet. If they are a dog, having the leash and collar, having that on hand, or crate that you can take with you. Pasco County has one animal pet-friendly shelter in our facility, and to care for your pet, you need to be able to have a crate or a cage that goes with you.
Right, and they register. They have to register their pet if they're going to use a pet-friendly shelter, correct?
No, they can show up with the pet, but you need to make sure that you have the pet's paperwork with that.
Oh, okay, good point. Good point. So they need to have their ducks in a row when they show up with that. Sally?
But in Pinellas, we do ask them to register if they're going to come to shelter. And if let's say they're signing up for special needs and they have a pet, they can still go to special needs and still get their pet taken care of. But again, they need to register through Animal Services for that. So, because we don't want people staying home because they're not going to leave their pet. There's plans to be able to take pets for folks that we can't keep you together, but we can keep both of you safe and then put you back together after the fact.
Yeah.
So we don't want people staying home just because they're worried about their pet. And if they're not going to go to a shelter, if they're going to go to a hotel or motel or family or friends, then they need to have that conversation with family and friends and take their supplies, as Laura mentioned. And a lot of the hotels and motels that aren't even pet-friendly on a sunny day have plenty of emergency policies that they put in place, or plenty of them do have emergency policies that they've put in place to allow for pets during an actual emergency. So looking around and finding a hotel or motel that's in a non-evacuation zone or one of the higher levels and finding out what their policies are and if they give any latitude during emergencies so that they can show up there and bring their pet with them.
All great points. All great points. And the hurricane guides that you have available in Pasco and Pinellas County, they have a wealth of different information, and they have great preparedness ideas within their tips, and it covers medications, and it also covers pets too. Where in your respective counties can you find some of these guides?
In Pasco County, you can go to any of our government offices, as well as the post office and our library facilities, have them out there. You can also call up our office at Pasco County Emergency Management, which is 727-847-8137, and we can make arrangements to even get it to you through there.
Good deal. Seth?
Pretty close to the same thing. So all of the cities have received them. So they'll be at city halls, they're at libraries, they're at all the county government offices. And if people want to call our office at 464-3800, we'll be happy to get one out to them.
Nice. Let's we have a little time left, but let's talk about all the cool initiatives that you all have going on in each of your counties. From last year, and I think it's still a program that goes on, you have the Barrier Island Reentry Program, Sally?
Yes, that's actually something that the Sheriff's Office is administering, so those folks who live on the Barrier Islands can work through their own jurisdiction, their own city there on the Barrier Islands, and go sign up for a reentry pass. And we thoroughly encourage them to do it. It's going to expedite their return to the beach. If they don't have it, they're still going to be allowed to return, but it's going to be a bit of a longer process,
right,
trying to get out there. And
you have a storm surge application as well. I think I used it last year. I thought it was pretty darn neat.
Yeah, it's not new, but it's still valid, and with our storm surge having changed and our evacuation zones having changed, it's a really good idea for folks to relook at what does the storm surge look like for their location.
Alert Pasco. That's the buzzword that I hear in Pasco County.
We actually have two apps. We have the My Pasco app, which is the county's app that has the My Alert Pasco on it. So if you download either with a Google or Android phone or an iPhone, you could get the free app. It has notifications from the county, but third bullet down is sign up for Alert Pasco, and that way we can help get messages and notifications about events to you.
What a cool notification system. And I think your overriding notification system in Pinellas County is Ready Pinellas?
Well, so a couple of things. So Alert Pinellas is our notification system as well. The state's kind of taken that theme. We suggested, hey, this works. So we would ask them to do the same thing, sign up for Alert Pinellas, but we have an app that they can download from a Play Store that we call it the Pocket in Your Plan, or your plan in your pocket, because it will walk them through whether they are planning ahead of time or they've started right in the middle of the event. Tell them what their evacuation zone is based on their address. It'll let them sign up for Alert Pinellas there. It'll give them a checklist to go through for preparedness purposes, and they can actually develop a plan and print it out if they want, or save it to their device.
Sounds very similar. Both your counties have always been pretty progressive in helping people prepare. You're fully delved into the 21st century and the technology, and we have a wealth of seniors too. I don't believe the hype that all seniors can't use smartphones
Absolutely.
And tablets and all that. I think that there's a wealth of ways they can get that information, and you all provide a great deal of it. 10-second takeaway from hurricane preparedness for seniors. Anyone?
It's the act of actually thinking about it and doing it. It's not a nice thought. You live in one of the most hurricane prone areas in the country, so it's a really smart move.
Yeah, you agree?
Plan and prepare now. You don't have to wait for hurricane season to start putting things in place.
Good information. Ladies, I really appreciate you coming on our show and sharing such good knowledge like you've done years before, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. We hope you learned a great deal from this month's broadcast. We also hope this episode helped you take this hurricane season as serious as you should. At the end of the show, we'll show you some cool resources available to you, so get your pencil ready. We'll see you next month, and until then, please stay safe and utilize all the resources these two emergency management offices have offered you.